think that we were all just celebrating life 24 hours prior to the worst thing that could happen.
This is now a confirmed tornado.
The high school graduation, that is pretty much in the path of this storm.
That Sunday, the weather was beautiful.
After graduation, there's a big party that's thrown.
My dad texted me and said there's a tornado. 2 minutes later, it gets dark within like seconds.
I'll never forget the noise that made it. It was like so loud.
It was a monster, and it was catching up to us.
Where do we go? Oh my God. Come on, come on!
The tornado was like right there, pretty much about to touch us.
I looked up, and I saw clear blue sky. We were in the eye, totally surrounded by chaos.
I could feel my body lift off the ground.
I don't know how long I can hang on for.
I accepted my fate. I was flying inside the tornado.
That was the trailer for the hit Netflix documentary, The Twister, Caught in the Storm. And this is Factual America. I'm your host, Matthew Sherwood. Each week I watch a hit documentary and then talk with the filmmakers and their subjects. The Twister, Caught in the Storm is a tribute to this town's incredible resilience. Director Alexandra Lacey joins us today to discuss her coming-of-age doc, which shows us what it is like to survive Mother Nature's harrowing wrath. Stay tuned. Alexandra Lacey, welcome to Factual America. How are things with you?
Oh, really good, thank you. Apart from having a stubborn cough and fighting the cold here in London, I'm all good.
Yeah, you and me both, expats here in the UK.
Yeah.
It's a constant story of weather and cold and rain and coughs and flus and colds. So that's my effort to keep people from moving over here. But it's great to have you on. We're going to be talking about The Twister, Caught in the Storm, released on Netflix earlier this month. Congratulations. The last I saw, I think yesterday it's still, number 3 in the UK? I know it was number 1 a few days ago when I was watching it. My wife told me when she looked at it, it was number 2. So well done. I'm sure it's doing well in the States as well. So you must be thrilled.
Absolutely thrilled, really. I mean, for it to be, I think it's 9 days since release at time of recording this, and it's been in the top 1, number 2, number 3 in all the major countries around the world. So we're really, really happy. What I'm mostly happy about, though, is the conversation that's swirling around the film about not just natural disasters and weather and Mother Nature, but also about community and hope and the gay experience and resilience and religion.
Right.
And these are, all these themes that we were hoping would come out of the film, that it wouldn't just be about the disaster. So that's wonderful.
All right. Well, you've just ticked off a bunch here that I had written down, but I will. But why don't you, to get us started, because it did release, I think, on the 19th, and these things stay up for a while, so some people will have seen it, but I think many of our viewers and listeners will have not. Maybe give us a synopsis. What is Twister, Caught in the Storm all about?
Twister, Caught in the Storm is about a group of teenagers and young people that were growing up in the Bible Belt in America, in Southwest Missouri, in a town called Joplin, Missouri. And they were living in a generation where there was a lot of end of the world predictions. Pre-2012, there was the Mayan end of the world prediction, but also an evangelist, Harold Camping, had predicted the world was going to end on May 21st, 2011. So they're hearing about this. They're seeing it in movies, seeing it in TV shows, hearing it on the news and in church. And then the biggest tornado to hit America at that time came right through their town on high school graduation day. And so the film is told from the perspective of these young people. It's a coming of age story as they take you through their experience of survival, and they talk about how that experience changed each one of them as they became grown-ups.
It is an incredible story, quite riveting. I mean, the other aspect of this is they actually shot footage of this happening, right? I mean, this is kind of early days of cell phones, smartphones and stuff. So they actually take footage from inside I mean, that's not the point of the story, but you do see into the inside of the storm.
Yeah, I mean, we were absolutely amazed to discover. So Kaylee, Mac, and Eric, who were amateur storm chasers at the time, they were out chasing storms. It's something they did a lot. I think Kaylee and Mac, some of their first dates were going and chasing storms over on the Kansas border. And they were filming that day and kept on filming. And Matt grabbed the phone and put it in his pocket, and it took us right into the eye of the storm. And I remember the very first time that the producer Carla and I sat with them and they played us the clip in full. And I just, the adrenaline was, I was shaking. We had to sit in the car afterwards and calm ourselves down. We weren't even there, but you could just really feel the energy.
I mean, a lot of people survived it, right? And how did you settle on these subjects? How did you find Mac and Kaylee? And I mean, it's, as I said, there's so many plot. I think when we were talking beforehand, there's so many plot lines and twists and turns, and you've got all these amazing characters. I guess you had your pick, but how did you settle on these?
You know what? It's a town of 50,000, right? So there's a lot of stories, and every story is important. And people opened their hearts to us and shared all sorts of unimaginable tales. And we don't, discount any of them. But of course, we had to choose one perspective. Otherwise, it was just going to take too long to fit it all in. And when we found out it was high school graduation day, we decided, right, I think anybody in the world can relate to being a teenager if they're old enough. So it felt much more universal. Like if you're not from Tornado Alley and you'll never experience a tornado, perhaps something else traumatizing might happen to you or has happened to you. So then you can relate to these characters. So then we decided, right, teenagers and young people connected to Joplin High School. And then we went from there and found the characters. I wanted to approach it similar to a movie. What sort of characters would you expect to find in a coming of age tale and a natural disaster movie? So we wanted to get a teenage weatherman, a teenage storm chaser.
Right.
You got to have a character from the high school who then, connects to the blue lights, the paramedic. So that was Keegan.
Right.
And also it was important for us to include Will Norton's story in this film, because for everybody in Joplin, they said it will not be a story about Joplin if Will Norton is not in it.
Right.
And so we, of course, spoke to his family and made sure that was something they were okay with, and they wanted his legacy to continue. So that was something we did. So we wanted a small cast of characters that were all young. And also we wanted to make sure that each of them had a transformative story in the storm, that they really felt that moment had changed them in some sizable way.
I mean, it's almost harkens back to sort of 80s teen flicks, except it's not funny, right? But it
does. Yeah.
I think it's the anniversary of Breakfast Club releasing a few days ago. So, it's seems appropriate. So, I mean, if you don't mind, because that's what struck me was how, all these incredible people that you bring on camera, you introduce them all right in the first scene, pretty much. We already talked about Mac and Kaylee. There were a couple then. They're amateur storm chasers. So Chad, this child weathercaster from San Diego, how incredible is that? And honestly, he flies in on the day, right?
It was absolutely amazing. I mean, one of the ways that when I'm thinking about what sort of characters I'd like for a film, I do sort of imagine, I wonder if there was somebody, in a plane in the sky flying over, I wonder if there was someone like that. And I already sort of said that to our team, but then we were speaking to the local weatherman, Doug Heedy at KOAM.
Right.
And we asked him, did you by any chance know any young people at the time, that were interested in weather? And he goes, well, actually, there was a kid that came in from California to intern for me on that day. So we were like, oh my gosh. And so the producer reached out to Chad and his mom, and they were, of course, delighted to be a part of it. So that was amazing, an amazing find. It really was. So thank you, Doug.
Yeah, Doug is he's like the head teacher or the principal or something in this teen flick, right? But then how does he pronounce it? You say Cecil? Yeah, Cecil.
Like during filming, I kept saying Cecil, and
UK based.
Yeah, Cecil was really kind, and he was like, I would normally be annoyed about that, but as you're British, it's okay. So yeah, Cecil is his name. Cecil is such a special person, honestly. he shared with us so much more about his experience growing up as a gay kid in the Bible Belt that we could never include.
Right.
So I hope that people will speak to him and hear about the rest of it. But something that really struck us about his story is he talked about how when he was growing up, he was presented with these books called The Left Behind, which
Yeah.
are Christian books that are designed. I mean, many folks, now that I know about them, said they read them too. And they're sort of post-apocalyptic books that are designed to teach kids that may be left behind after the rapture, how to survive in an end of days circumstance. And they're scary. They're sort of like an action thriller sort of set of books. But they really scared him growing up. They really did. And so imagine you're reading those, you're going to church, you know that you're gay, you're getting bullied, you're not sure if people will accept you, you know? And then you're seeing in the news that the end of the world is coming, and it's in the movies and everything else. And this contributed to how Cecil felt that day, that he had been left behind, and it's truly unimaginable, a 17-year-old thinking that he'd been left behind. Yeah.
Yeah, I hadn't heard the term rapture in a long time. I will say I have, I'm not from the Bible Belt originally, but I'm sort of in one of the notches further down.
Yeah.
And some of my family, it's the Left Behind books, the Rapture. Very sincere kid who, having been to some of those types of churches in the past, yes, it can be, you can leave with lots of doubts. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Then you got Keegan the jock, right? It's
Yeah.
obvious he says it.
Yeah, he does. He does. And, he's was one of Will Norton's best friends, but also is the son of the head of the paramedics in town in Joplin. And he was trained, in EMT. So what was great about him is he was able to talk to us about some of the recovery that happened after, but also talking about the search for his best friend, Will.
Right.
So that felt important.
Yeah, because here he is. He's not just a jock captain of the football team, all that stuff. He's, like you said, an EMT. His father's an EMT, and he gets home. The first thing they do is, okay, back out. Got to start rescuing people.
Yeah, and also he was graduating that day.
Yeah,
it's such a special moment, right? Like for hundreds of kids that day, it was supposed to be a landmark moment as they stepped into adulthood, and then things just, took a really devastating turn. So.
And then you've got Stephen, who looks just like an old friend of mine, to be honest with you. It was scary. And what an incredible story he is.
Honestly, again, a wonderful human. He's been through so much leading up to the tornado. Honestly, the strength that kid has is incredible. Pretty much had to raise his little brother and raise himself, and was basically homeless pre-tornado. But to see what he overcame is honestly incredible. And I the comments on social media following the release of the film around him, the sort of amazement, I guess, at the resilience, at him surviving, not only being thrown around within an EF5 tornado, but then having a rare flesh-eating fungus. People are amazed by him, and people apparently amputees are amazed by him, and they now don't want to give up on trying to work around their disability, and it's really inspired a lot of people.
Yeah, and I mean, he was couch surfing at age 12. I mean, he's just an incredible story.
Yeah. And he's also hilarious. I mean, I've honestly never had somebody that I've interviewed make me laugh and cry at the same time. And Stephen makes me do that. And Cecil does too, actually, with the hair dye comment of his mom.
Definitely. I could, yes. It channeled some part of my family. Let's put it that way. Hey, I think we're going to give our guests, your viewers and listeners, an early break. So we'll be right back with Alexandra Lacey, director of The Twister, Caught in the Storm, released on Netflix earlier this month. That's March 25th. Do check it out. You're listening to Factual America. Subscribe to our mailing list or follow us on Facebook, Instagram, or X to keep up to date with new releases or upcoming shows. Check out the show notes to learn more about the program, our guests, and the team behind the production. Now back to Factual America. So welcome back to Factual America. I'm here with Alexandra Lacey, director of The Twister, Caught in the Storm, streaming on Netflix. So we were just talking about all these incredible people incredible at the time, mostly teenagers that you encountered. I mean, that's the other thing, put it in that perspective. I mean, the resilience of these 17, 18, I mean, maybe Mac and Kaylee were a little bit older, but still,
Yeah.
very early adulthood is quite incredible. And we were just talking about Steven. What is he? Is he the skate punk? What is he? It's hard to just.
No. Oh my gosh, he'd be so upset if he heard you say skater. He was very much a BMX rider.
Okay.
He actually
that shows me my prejudice. Sorry, Steven, if you
Yeah.
ever see this. I wasn't trying to. You just reminded me also of a cousin who was a skater. So there you go.
Yeah. No, he told me off for saying he was a skater. He's like, you realize there's a rivalry between BMX riders and skaters. So no, he was a BMX biker, and he actually built his bike completely on his own, like from pieces that he was able to buy over time, you know, and he was amazing. I mean, 6-foot jumps on top of the ramps and everything.
Back to this harrowing tale. I mean, he literally gets sucked out of his car. I mean, this is like straight out of the narrative, the dramatic films that come out of Hollywood, right? This does happen. People are in their car, EF5 tornado. I think that's what you also have is you have all kinds of elements here. You have chase scenes, right? But they're being chased by the tornado. Besides them chasing the tornado, they get chased. They go straight into it. Unbeknownst to them till it's too late, and he gets sucked out, and he literally flies through a tornado and lives to tell the tale.
It's honestly mind-blowing. It's mind-blowing that he survived that. I mean, as his young friend Doug said at the time, you know, you could really see his heart beating out of his chest. So when they discovered him, he was lying in the devastation, and his body was in pieces. He's told me that he remembers the sensation of dying several times. Like his friends were trying to get him to stay awake, and he could feel the pain going away and sort of going in and out of death is how he describes it. I've always found brain injury really interesting because my own mother actually had a motorcycle accident and was in a coma for several months.
Wow.
And she talked to me about her experience. So that's partly why I asked Stephen then about his coma and what he saw.
Oh yeah, no, that was very compelling actually. When that was, I mean, yeah, but it's not just him, right? They all do. So, I mean, that's the other thing. You've already talked about it, but the transformation all these people go through, it's actually amazing. So to see them now, what is it, 13, 14 years later? So they're still young, certainly for my standards. And their lives, how they've been changed.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing, really. I guess what I would say, just obviously we spoke to a lot more teenagers and young people in town, and what we seemed to find was a unifying experience. Was that, you know, for many of us, like self-discovery takes years, right? I don't think I probably realized my magic and my strength till I was in my mid-30s. But I think going through something as traumatic as that, it allows you just to discover your strength much quicker. I mean, they grew up in one day.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So like, you know, control when you're a teenager is quite a big thing, right? You always feel like your parents are in control, telling you when to go to bed and what to do and what you can and can't do. But then when you're faced with Mother Nature, which is the ultimate controller of all of us, right? Like, particularly for Kaylee, that gave her the ability to be okay with things being a little bit out of control, you know, in her life, because look what she survived, you know? So I think control was a big one for all of them. And then just self-discovery happening a lot quicker. Of course, for Cecil.
And as you said, and you rightly pay homage to the other teenagers. And let's face it, the whole of Joplin, Missouri, probably the whole of Joplin grew up in one day, right? And what those people have been through. And I think what I found very, you know, what is this story about? And it's partly about, you know, community and, you know, for whatever his issues or problems he had with his upbringing or elements of it, right? He still lives there. He loves it, you know.
Yeah.
I think it was very touching, you know. He's come to, you know, and the others, I guess they're all pretty much stayed local.
They have actually. And Chad actually left California and moved to Tornado Alley to become a grown-up weatherman after this, despite his, you know, because of his experience. I guess he felt a responsibility to go and report there. And then with Cecil, there is a recent development. He still loves, and he's still a
As he
big
moved away.
Joplin fan. But no, he moved just down the road to St. Louis,
Right.
mainly just in the face of recent political activity and things like that. So I don't know if you want to include that, but
No, I mean, I think it's reality. I mean, it is something you see throughout much of the U.S. That's why urban areas have become sort of, if you want to put a political angle on it, it tends to people move to urban areas, and people in urban areas move out to the countryside for, it's this further segregation of political views and things like that, which is a topic for another time probably. But yes.
But I do want to say, though, just in terms of Cecil, I mean, his mom and his father, they were always so supportive of him, and so he had a great upbringing. I think for him, it was more fear that his community would not accept him, his peers.
Right.
And then he was ostracized from his church at the time, right before the tornado.
Right.
And what's been so wonderful is since the release of the film, he runs a queer support group there in Joplin, and they have had an outpouring of support and donations from all around the world, which has been pretty incredible, really.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, so how did you become involved with this project?
So Netflix approached me and they wanted to tell the story of Joplin, the tornado story.
Right.
And I sort of said to them, I'll do this if I can make it more than just a classic natural history documentary.
Right.
Because I felt like I didn't just want to make, a disaster film that wasn't done sensitively. And there's already been films that have been made with the storm chasers that were there in town and the sort of science and stats and all of that.
Right.
And I find that I like to make character-led documentaries that are sensitively told. So I wanted to find characters that would get people to sit up and listen to the story of Joplin, and go through the lens of their story instead of zooming out and seeing it more as a kind of event in history.
And so did you know what you had on your hands going in? I mean, like what you were going to find in terms of this treasure trove of characters and audio, film, and clips and things like that?
Every documentary that we make, it's just a crazy journey. You have no idea what you're going to uncover. You just have to have an ambition and I guess a direction to go in, and then try your best. I mean, archive is something that I'm a massive fan of. So going back to when I produced the Anna Nicole Smith film for Netflix, I found an old box of Betamax tapes of Anna from 1992 that no one had ever seen before in the garage of her old friend. And since then, I've just decided, I need to find that box. I got to find that, that treasure trove of archive.
Right.
And so the producer from the very first trip took a drive with her and was asking everybody, do you have any photos, videos from the time? I think we amassed 6,000 clips throughout production for this film. So it was, getting to meet the people there in Joplin was wonderful. The characters that are then in the film, finding the archive, the whole experience it was amazing, really, and very fast, too fast.
How long did you film?
The film from beginning to end probably took just over a year to make, and that's including the edit. And I'm sure you've spoken to some filmmakers that take sort of 5 or 6 years to make their films.
Yes.
So it was quite literally being in, some kind of storm of documentary filmmaking, and we had to go really quickly. And we were in Joplin, I think 4 or 5 times over the course of 6 months. And then I filmed the visual elements in Illinois.
Right. Which is not too far away.
No.
I mean, so Netflix had determined that the time was right for something like this. That's interesting because it is why, there's always that why now question, right? That they ask you when you're making a pitch or something.
Well, I mean, there's just more and more and more natural disasters in the news. And then particularly with the recent, just in the last few days, there was 100 tornadoes that went across America.
Right.
So I guess it does feel like the right time to explain the human impact of Mother Nature, but perhaps do it in a way that people will really listen, because there's so much, it's become so political, hasn't it? The words climate change. So I didn't include those in my film on purpose. I wanted people just to go through that immersive experience with the characters and see what that could be like as a way of understanding the power of Mother Nature,
You mentioned a tornado doc, and you'll get my attention just because I grew up just south of Tornado Alley, but we still had tornado.
Oh, what? Yeah? Where were you?
I was in San Antonio. But we still had tornado drills, right? And my mother's from further north in Texas. So my family actually, I got to get the straights on this, but there's a bit of folklore and family lore about this. But they did survive the Waco EF5 hurricane in 1953. My mother
Wow.
tells a story about how they lived north. They were in a small town outside of Waco, but my grandfather used to go to work in Waco,
Hmm.
and they could see from their house that something horrible was happening down south of them because
Whoa.
it's all plains, so you can see forever. And back then, no phone, you don't have cell phones, you don't have anything. So you didn't know until he showed up that night,
Mm.
whether he had, survived or not. Right.
Oh my
So yeah,
gosh.
you get my attention, but how do you go about making a riveting natural disaster doc? I mean, you make it character led, but did you feel like you're in competition with CGI or, I mean, you even kind of reference it in the film Twister, Into the Storm. These are Into the Storm's literally about the Joplin. I mean, it doesn't say it's about Joplin. It's this, was it Silverton or whatever the
Mm.
fictional town is. Um,
Mm.
I mean, you make a bet. I mean, my opinion, it's much more harrowing and a better story. But how do did you ever see that as a challenge?
Well, thank you, Matthew. Yeah. So actually, from the moment these characters started telling us about their experiences in the storm, I was saying to the team, we have a challenge here. We do not have a Hollywood movie budget. Nowhere
Right.
near.
Right.
Nowhere near.
Yeah.
How are we going to get people to see what these contributors are telling us in interview? Because we have to make sure they can see these moments somehow.
Yeah. Show don't tell.
Exactly. And sometimes you don't need to. Sometimes you can let people's imaginations
Right.
go. And so we do that a little bit in terms of like letting Kaylee and Mac's archive be as it was, just black.
Mm.
And then you're imagining what they're seeing. But there were some moments like being in the eye of a tornado, which is very rare that happens, being in a car that's flying inside a tornado, et cetera. And so I actually took my clue from them because they said our memories were like slow motion. So then I decided, okay, so here's what we need to do. We need to shoot some super slow motion, high frame rate footage, which then can complement but not overshadow the real archive, which is fast and raw, but will get people to understand that moment and take them on that journey with them. And that's something that we could do that wasn't going to require a Hollywood movie budget, right? But really could elevate the film. And then I was able to get a little bit of money for VFX, not a huge amount. And what we did was to make it a little bit more affordable is we took real storm archive, and then put that in reflections that I shot as VFX plate shots on location. So for instance, when the dog is looking up at the cumulonimbus cloud, I can never say that word, that was a real dog that we shot, and then we added the glass plate and a real archive of cloud that was slightly manipulated into that reflection.
Right.
When Doug is looking for Steven, there's a window stuck in the mud, and we put a real shot of Joplin at nighttime with a lightning flash into the reflection of that glass pane.
Right.
So we did some stuff like that. It was an idea that I had of taking what we were going to shoot on location or even in Illinois in our drama visuals, and using real archive as a way to make it so they didn't have to build it from scratch. Because for those big Hollywood movies like Twisters, every single one of those shots, there's crazy amount of work that goes into those, and we had nowhere near that budget.
So probably each one of their shots is your whole budget, right?
I think so. I mean, we had I think we had 50,000 for our whole feature doc for VFX. Right. And I'm pretty sure that each one of their shots is like 600,000, or I mean, I don't even know.
Exactly.
I don't even. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we had to be creative,
But I thought that was a very creative use of. You have a small clip from one of them, and I thought that was useful because it didn't look. So it showed how realistic they've done. What a great job in some ways they've done, but at the same time, it just shows what you've got is equal to what they've put together, right? I mean, so you can't actually you don't literally have what is it? Because I did watch Into the Storm, right, before watching this. So yeah, you don't have the guy in the super tank with storm chasing vehicle going up to the top of the eye and then crashing down again, but I don't think anyone expects that, and that's obvious.
Well, thank you, Matthew. Thank you. I mean, we've had a lot of people online saying, like on TikTok, making videos going, Hollywood doesn't have anything on this film, but I think it's probably because people are more moved because it is real. It's not fiction.
Sometimes less is more, right? And I think the way you did the scene with Steven, and there you, like you said, you used some VFX for that a little bit, but nothing major. But him, because that's the other thing about all these people you settled on, these subjects, they're incredible storytellers.
Yeah.
I didn't feel like you had to do much prompting when you were interviewing them. I think they just knew how to tell their story.
Yeah, it's interesting because, I mean, obviously my job is to help people to tell their story in the best way, right? And I've interviewed a lot of people. Sometimes people give you 2-word answers, sometimes people talk too fast or whatever. Or sometimes people feel that they have to like give you some kind of performance, but really ultimately I just want them to be themselves. Right. What I thought was really amazing about these folks is that I do think because of them discovering their own who they are and wanting to be authentically themselves, they weren't going to give it to me any other way than how they wanted to say it, which makes it wonderful because you can really tell. And I didn't do a lot of prompting. You're right. I let them tell their story in the way that they wanted to tell it, and then just made sure we had all the bits that we needed to be able to put the thing together. But it very much was them telling their story in their own way. They're the most emotional interviews that I've ever done, for sure, because our style is that we would step through the experience with them, and we do it over sort of a day or a day and a half with lots of breaks. So you're sort of going through that trauma, and I very much appreciate them having to relive that trauma for the purpose of this documentary. And we just made sure we handled those interviews with the utmost care.
Well done. I mean, I think there's a reason. You don't have to take my word for it. There's a reason it's in your Netflix top, not even top 10, top 5, top 3, 2, 1. So congratulations again. I think it's a great movie. I really enjoyed it, and definitely recommend that everyone go and check it out. And not just because you might be curious to see what an EF5 tornado looks like, or what it's like to live through one. I was surprised you said when you hit your mid-30s. My goodness, I didn't think you're that old yet. But
oh, thank you.
So you've got a good career going. I mean, I saw that you did the Manson, the Lost Tapes. Is that right?
Yeah.
What did you see the Errol Morris doc that came out recently?
I haven't watched it. I'm kind of. There's some stories that keep getting told over and over and over again.
Right.
To be honest, I'm not sure I need to watch it again. I do love Errol Morris, so no offense, Errol Morris. I love your docs.
Right.
I loved Wormwood. But yeah, I'm not sure I'll check it out. Yeah.
Well, no, and okay, so then I can say, and I won't let. So it is a Netflix doc. I thoroughly enjoyed watching it, but the reason I asked is I'm not a big Manson aficionado, but I didn't feel like there was anything. I mean, it's beautifully shot, as you can imagine. Morris goes in a little bit different directions than maybe he's done previously, but I didn't feel like we really learned any. Well, not that that's what the whole point of it is, to learn something, but it wasn't like it. Like you said, it's such. I guess at what point? Because this almost takes you back to the tornado genre, right? I mean, this is a saturated market in many ways, but there's always new ways of, or at least supposedly there's always new ways of telling a story. But it almost feels like with Manson, maybe we have.
Yeah, totally.
Run through. There's nothing.
And the O.J. Simpson story too. That keeps getting repeated. You know, but yeah, I mean, I guess like that's why when I took this film on, I didn't want to just make it about the tornado. I wanted it to be about human nature. And what's wonderful is the conversation around the film online is about hope and community and the gay experience and religion and the rapture. It's not just about natural disaster and Mother Nature. And that's what we always hoped our team that the film would do.
You're based here in the UK. I think we established that at least before we started filming. Despite our accents, we've both been here. I may have even been here longer than you have. But does that sort of, I guess you have a foot in the US, a foot in the UK. Does that, as a filmmaker, does that give you a unique perspective, you think?
I think it probably does a little bit. I've been here over half my life. My mom's British, dad's American. So I've always had sort of dual cultures within me and sense of humor and all of that. And coming up the ranks here in British documentary filmmaking, I understand the sensibilities that they work in here. But I understand what Americans find interesting and intriguing and all of that. So I think that's been quite helpful, actually, in making American stories with British executive producers and companies like Raw. Yeah, I think it's
I
unique.
probably shouldn't. They're going to shoot me for saying this, but what I will say is British, my experience, British filmmakers can do more with less when it comes from the budget.
Yeah, absolutely. I know. I always wondered that. I was like, why is it only British? Like mainly back in the day, it was mainly British production companies making a lot of the docs that are out there. And I always wondered that, But I do think it also harks back to the sort of BBC, journalistic way of making docs, and like not so focused on entertainment. But obviously now America's got a massive whole range of companies that I'd love to work with that are, doing that same kind of work. So
okay. Well, speaking of which, what's next for you?
I'm actually working on another feature for Netflix.
Okay.
That I can't talk about. It's all top secret.
You filmmakers can never talk about it. It's, but I'm going to guess it's probably not a natural disaster.
No, it's not. I like variety. I feel like I've got to have a variety of subject matters. I don't want to end up in just one area. And to be honest, it's really, yes, it is about the subject matter, but it's always, for me, it's about the characters, and what you can learn from that story. So it's, I always make character-led docs.
Well, Alexandra, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Really, really thank you for coming on. And it's congratulations again on the success of this film and the continued success with everything you do in your career. And we'd look forward to having you on again sometime when we can talk to us about that next project. So so thanks again. Just remind our listeners and viewers, we've been talking with Alexandra Lacey, director of The Twister, Caught in the Storm. It's on Netflix. You know where to find it. Check it out. Thanks for listening to Factual America. Please subscribe and like us and share us with friends and family. Find us on YouTube, social media, and factualamerica.com. This is Matthew Sherwood, signing off.